One of the most profound things I've learned in the over 18 years I've been giving financial advice, can't believe it's been that long, is that investing makes a lot more sense in the context of a plan, and that life's financial decisions involve way more than just investing. This video takes a look at our approach to wealth planning, which is different than just financial or investment planning. And this is the necessary disclaimer that says I'm doing my best, but I'm sometimes expressing my opinion and I can get things wrong, although very rarely. A lot of people have something called a plan, but not all plans are created equal or allow you to use them in the same way. And some people don't even have a plan. They kind of let their financial life just happen and they don't approach it on purpose. A step above that is a spreadsheet, but a spreadsheet's not really a planning tool. The next step up is what I would say most of the financial advisor community uses, which is a statistical model of your goals and investments. And you can tell if someone's using a statistical model if the plan results in an odds of success. Getting to a more useful tool, in my view, is a total wealth plan, which generally maps out the estimated cash flows, the inflows and outflows throughout your life. In this case, return from an investment portfolio is just another inflow or input, along with things like Social Security or rental income, part-time work. A wealth plan recognizes that saving $1 because you optimize your healthcare or tax strategy is no different than making $1 from your investments. Ultimately, it's how much wealth you're left with after everything's accounted for. But some advisors who do the work to build a cash flow model still just rely on market growth to make it successful. So the final evolutionary step adds an investment strategy that intentionally increases the odds of success instead of hoping you get enough market growth. Now, all of these planning techniques are better than nothing, even just a spreadsheet, but in our view, it's only a complete cash flow model of your financial life that really helps to see the long-term impact of decisions that you might make today. I thought I'd touch on some of the reasons we opted not to use other planning techniques, even though some of them are actually more popular. And I'll start with spreadsheets, even though no professionals I know of use them as their primary tool. Spreadsheets are okay for your personal tracking, but they aren't really good for running different planning scenarios. They would have to be too complex and would probably be out of date more often than not, certainly every time the tax laws change. The most popular professional financial planning tool is MoneyGuide Pro, which is a statistical planning tool, which means that it relies on historical or statistical market returns to repeat themselves in the future. But the market can have a wide range of outcomes over different historical time periods, and statistics need a large sample size or a lot of time to play themselves out, so you won't know if your plan actually needs changing until it might be too late. I'll show you a quick example of an actual scenario. This created a portfolio that needs $12,000 a month of income after tax, so we got to take out a little extra for taxes. It's a 50% bond, 50% stock portfolio. And all of the statistical planning tools use what's called a Monte Carlo simulation. So they take random historical market returns and then vary them over, in this case, 10,000 scenarios. And I forced it to use the worst year in year one, just to have kind of a more pessimistic scenario. And then these are 5 of the 10,000 simulations that represent different percentiles. And it says you'd have a 10% chance of ending the plan with $11 million and a 25% chance of ending the plan with $5 million. But you'd also have a 10% chance of being destitute at age 76. How do you know which one of these paths you're on before it's too late to make corrections? The conclusion of pretty much all the financial planning tools that use statistics is that they come up with a probability of success at a certain age. And in this case, it was 85%. Is that good or is that bad? Well, in my view, it's kind of difficult to know, which is why I don't care for statistical-based planning tools. And that's why we like building a detailed cash flow model of your life. They don't rely on historical market returns. Instead, they determine the specific return you need to be successful. However, if you don't then use investments that intentionally increase the probability of beating that return, you're back to relying on statistics. And that's a little like building a custom car and then putting a cheap engine in it. Not that I have anything against Hyundais. And that brings us to how we like to do planning. A cash flow model starts with an estimate of all your annual income sources that have nothing to do with the portfolio or investing. Ultimately, we're going to solve for the portfolio return you'll need to replace a paycheck. But first, we need a year-by-year estimate of how much it'll cost to run and enjoy your life, leave a legacy, whatever you want to do. Once we have that, we now know how much work the portfolio needs to do to bridge the difference, and therefore how much risk you need to take. Notice it's not how much risk you can tolerate, it's how much you need. If the return requirement is reasonable, we now have the complete equation that tells us year by year what your total net worth should be in order to be on track. Let me show you an example of what a cash flow model looks like. This is a roll-up of many different pages and tax equations and things like that. But ultimately what we're doing is taking a look at all of your cash inflows year by year and comparing them to an estimate of all your cash outflows year by year and seeing what the difference is. In this case, we're assuming that you're going to need $15,000 per month net after tax of income, and we're assuming a portfolio growth rate of 5%, which is conservative, but we use that for planning purposes. So now we know, based on a 5% growth rate, what the portfolio is contributing. If it's contributing more than you need to cover your cash flows, well, then we have a surplus and we can put that into the portfolio assets. If there's a deficit, we take it away. So in this portfolio, we're having the first several years, you're still working. And so we're assuming in this case that any amount that's not being saved to the portfolio is being spent, which is why the inflows and outflows are the same. And then in 2030, you retire, but you take a part-time job. And somebody in the household is making $50,000 a year. We also, by the way, increase that $15,000 a month every year for inflation, so the outflows are going up a little bit. But now we can see the impact of a part-time job. And then for 2 years here, we're completely portfolio dependent, which means for many families, the portfolio assets go down a little bit. And that can be a little nerve-wracking, but when you see it in the context of a plan, it's not that big a deal until Social Security kicks in and starts lightening some of the portfolio load. Now in this case, in 2042, we're modeling the required minimum distributions, where the IRS is starting to force money out of your retirement account. In 2033, the minimum age for required minimum distribution jumps up to age 75. Now that's a lot of money coming out and a lot of taxes that have to get paid. So a lot of times we may look at earlier years when your tax rate is lower to maybe do some Roth conversions and try to get that tax rate down later on. So a lot of different modeling that we can do once we have this model in place. And really, this is the only plan or model I know of that gives you tangible answers. Benchmark is in quotes up above because another gripe I have with the industry is the misuse of the term benchmark. If you've ever worked on a project that has a specific time frame, you know that benchmarks are not used to track progress. You use indicators to tell whether you're ahead or behind a plan. And so a cash flow wealth plan provides a tangible progress indicator. And staying with that tangible theme, the measure of whether a plan will work or not is based on the number of dollars left at the end of your plan. In other words, what's the safety margin in dollars, not some percentage probability. And once this model is built, like I said, it's very easy to do different scenarios. And then the last step is the investment strategy that goes along with a plan of this type. The investment goal is not to beat the market, since we don't know if that'll make your plan successful or not. We want to minimize the gambling aspect by reverse engineering a portfolio that can beat your required return with high reliability. We tend to think of a portfolio as the engine that makes the model or the plan go. The plan tells us what role the portfolio needs to play in your financial life. And in general, we think the industry tends to focus too much on how much risk you can tolerate as opposed to how much you actually need. This leads to some people taking more risk than they need because of a false sense of needing to maximize returns or beat the market. And return isn't the only thing to consider. Before retirement, the job of the portfolio is pretty easy. Just get enough growth or return to beat your plan. But going into retirement, we need to shift gears and turn the portfolio into a cash machine that provides a paycheck replacement. Everyone needs an income plan in retirement, and they need to decide whether they're going to try to generate enough investment income or plan on skimming off growth every year. We prefer designing a retirement portfolio that produces enough dividends and interest as opposed to being forced to sell things periodically. For planning purposes, we've standardized on trying to get plans to work, assuming a 5% annual return. which today that sounds somewhat conservative, but actually it isn't. You might have heard of the 4% rule. And by the way, 5% is not our target. We want to beat that, including any investment and advisor fees, and we want to do it with higher reliability than relying on stocks to always go up. For those who like the excitement of attempting to pick the next NVIDIA or guess the next move of Bitcoin, having the bulk of a nest egg dedicated to beating your plan frees them up to fully gamble with a hopefully smaller portion of it. Here's the key though. To change the probability of success from something other than the market going up year after year, we have to look at asset types that aren't simply traditional market-based investments. We've got other videos that go into the specifics of some of those asset types, but if you're going to go through the work of building a cash flow wealth model, it doesn't make sense to then gamble with the outcome. I'll finish up with what we like to call the retirement equation. And there's a lot of things that influence a financially successful retirement. We'll start with things that we have total control over, which is how much we save and spend and how much risk we take with the portfolio. It's important to keep in mind that risk increases your probability of loss. It's not guaranteed that it'll increase your return. And the true effect of loss is not that your portfolio is down 20 or 25%. It's that you have to work some number of years longer or get a part-time retirement job or go on fewer family trips. Next, we have things that we may not control, but we have influence over. We can influence our longevity and health by taking care of ourselves. I mean, most of us have control over how long we'll work. And although we can't control inflation itself, we can be willing to modify our spending habits if we need to. And then finally, we have items that influence our financial success, but that we have no control over. I can't remember the IRS ever asking me whether I like a tax change or not. And although we have total control over how much portfolio risk we take, we have no control over how the market plays itself out over time. Ironically, many people like to spend the bulk of their planning discussions talking about market returns, which are unpredictable and we can't control. A much better use of time is attempting to optimize the things that we do control, and a well-built plan encourages those types of discussions. All right, that's it for this session. Thanks for listening, and if you would like to discuss any of this stuff further, feel free to give the office a call, and either Brian or myself would be happy to talk to you.